Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jordy. I am the Apple Solutions Architect at Lab9 Pro, and I'm here today between you and the party at Shelter Hall. My apologies. My session is probably one of the least technical ones here, as I do that to reach as much new Apple admins as I can. And I'm here to talk about user onboarding. What I learned from working with Lab9 for the past 10 years and the discussions that I had with our customers. I do still need a sign-off on my invoice for my stay here, so I will do a proper introduction of my employer. Lab9 Pro, we're the only Apple Premium partner in Belgium, so we have 32 stores for consumers and then 5 hubs for everything from small, medium business to enterprise, from education to government. We're the largest Adobe Platinum partner in Belgium. We are a Jamf Elite partner, Microsoft Gold partner. That list does go on. And I think everyone here knows a similar company within their own country. So you kind of know what we do, right? I don't need to explain what we do. And so user onboarding, it's a topic that I am very passionate about. And that passion stems from way before I ever even touched a Mac. I want to tell you a little backstory of when I was 13, 14 years old, so that's 18, 19 years ago. I was very into World of Warcraft. And my parents were not that into paying a monthly subscription fee. So I did what every 13-year-old with access to the internet did. Not that. And I Googled around and I found these open source projects that allowed you to emulate the server. So you could play alone or in the same network with some friends. If you knew how to port forward, you could play together with your entire town. If you tell me today to compile something or to edit a table in a MySQL database, I will know what you're talking about, not so much at 13 years old. So I Googled some more and I came across this whole community that was built around these open source projects, kind of like we're doing here. And I noticed that a lot of people were having the same issues as I had, the same questions as I had. So I decided to start and write down what I did to compile that server and post those tutorials online. Now still, people were not having a good time getting started. They had technical issues or maybe there was a language barrier. And I noticed other people were posting their compiles, which I thought was a great idea. So I started to do the same. Now, apparently that's highly illegal. And a couple of years after, I received a letter from Blizzard Entertainment telling me to stop. So I did. I never touched World of Warcraft ever again. But in the time in between, I'm very proud that my so-called repack was one of the most downloaded ones in the world. We had a small starter application that allowed you to boot up the server in a certain sequence and have it restart upon a crash. I had a friend that was into web design, or as much as you can be into web design at 13 years old, who made this very nice registration page so you could create an account within that server. He did some image work from our tutorials. We went as far and created a CMS so people could monetize their servers. We went pretty far. And I still occasionally get messages from people that recognize my name and that thank me for what I did back then, which warms my heart. But why am I telling you this? What am I doing here talking about World of Warcraft whilst you are here sitting waiting on me to talk about Apple devices? Well, I did nothing special back here, right? The tools that I put out there were essentially the same as what other people put out there. The only difference was that my onboarding experience was better. People had an easier time to get started with my tools as opposed to other tools. And that comes full circle because that is applicable to your Apple deployments as well. So when I go to customers, one of the first, or potential customers, one of the first discussions that I have is where Apple devices are blocked within the organization, and we want to get them to be supported, at least, or offered as a choice or standard within the organization. And I think everyone saw this Apple slide before. Sorry, Apple, for sharing it. Since we're here at a conference talking about managing and securing Apple devices, this is probably not the discussion that we need to have. If it is, talk to me after the presentation or tonight at Shelter Hall, preferably before the beers, and I'll gladly give you some pointers. But a follow-up discussion on this is often about what the onboarding end goal is for those organizations. I want to know what the IT team wants to achieve. I want to know what the security team wants to achieve, if that is a different team. And I always try and loop back to know what the impact is for the end users, right? Are the measures that were taken in the best interest of those end users? It's very easy for us as IT to push something out for the sake of security and not worry about what impact it has on your users. Now, I'm a true believer that an empowered end user will do their best work, but they will also generally create less IT tickets and cause less issues with shadow IT. So that's a win for your IT and security teams from the start. If we think about our users for a second, typically within an organization, I define 3. You could be more specific, you could broaden this up, but for the sake of the presentation, 3. You have your new users, your new hires, the blank slates. They don't have data yet, they don't require device migrations. Depending on your recruitment strategy, they might not even need training. So that's easy, right? Then you have your existing Mac users, often a lone wolf within an organization or a marketing team somewhere, often using unmanaged Macs. They can have data, they can require a device migration. They will not need training, they will know how to use a Mac. And these are the people that will notice the changes that you make when you start managing their devices. And they will have, let's call it feedback. But you want to listen to that input, right? You want to bridge that gap between the unmanaged device and the managed device, because those are your stakeholders within the company that you will need to convince other people to start using their Macs. And then you have the Windows users. They can have data. They can require a device migration. That's a whole headache on its own. They will need training, right? Even if it's as simple as saying the red X at the right is now the red dot at the left, they will need pointers. And these are also the people that will know what worked on a Windows computer and that doesn't work or works differently on a Mac. So you want to listen to them as well, and again, try and bridge that gap. Now, before we start enrolling devices, we need to think about those migrations. Now, device migrations are a whole topic on their own, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this topic. The first question that I often ask to our customers is if data migration is necessary or if it is allowed. We have a lot of customers that have a set policy that says, nope, you will not migrate. You will upload your data to the cloud, and if you get a new device, you start from scratch. If that is you, if that's applicable to you, please move on. But for the people that do want to enable device migrations, you need to think about what data that you want to migrate, and more specifically, what data that you do not want to migrate. You have to know the limitations of existing migration tools. Migration Assistant is awesome, and yes, it can work with managed Macs. But if you spend a lot of time as an IT team creating your user account in a very specific way, it's kind of sad to just throw that away and replace it with whatever you're migrating from. One tip that I can give you is the tool here on the right. It's made by our friends at IBM. It's called IBM DataShift. Now, that is purpose-built to do user migrations from one device to another, and it's purpose-built for Jamf. With some tinkering, you can get it to work with other MDMs, and you can allow it to migrate from an unmanaged Mac to a managed Mac or the other way around. They had a talk at JNUC last year, so you can watch that on YouTube. The link is here at the bottom. Now, I will share a QR code at the end, so you can just scan that and get all the links at once. And then we get to enrolling our devices, and I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Misha from Jamf did a great talk at JNUC last year explaining all possible enrollment methods. That talk is available on YouTube as well, and the link is at the top. For my presentation, I will primarily focus on organizationally owned devices and then the automated device enrollment workflow. Now, I will slightly touch on a user-driven workflow just to show you that that's possible, but for most of the slides here, automated enrollment. And then the goal is pretty clear, right? Most IT teams want to do a zero-touch deployment. They want to hand the box to the end user and have it install itself. They don't want to touch the device afterwards. That's a modern deployment workflow. It's customizable. It's available on all Apple platforms, so not only on a Mac. And maybe most importantly, it will preserve the known and loved unboxing experience for your end users. I don't know if you remember your first Mac that you put out of the box, but you want to be able to give that to your end users. Then we have a lot of tools in our toolkit to enhance that experience. Apple has quite a couple of native tools that we can leverage. The one here on the right is enrollment customization. So you can add panes to your setup assistant. You can require a login with your identity provider. So in our case, that's Microsoft Office. You can then get that info back into your MDM to do something with that. And I will demo 2 more native things that Apple makes available in the next slide. Of course, MDM vendors have their own solutions as well, and I will demo 3 in this presentation. And then we have a lot of open source solutions that we can leverage. Think about Set Up Your Mac, Outset, Baseline, Dep Notify if you still want to use it, something custom in Swift Dialog. There's many things out there. One tip that I give all of our customers is to think about the apps that you push out during enrollment. Lab9 is a Microsoft-heavy company, so we live in Microsoft Office. Unfortunately, I prefer Pages, Numbers, and Keynote, but whatever. I'm still hesitant to push out the Office installer on enrollment because that takes 5 to 6 gigs, so that on a good network takes about 10 minutes to be downloaded and installed. And I say that whilst I think about our end users or end customers that are dead set on pushing out the entire Adobe suite on enrollment. Please don't. That's horrible for your end users. That will take a couple of hours. You're downloading hundreds of gigs at a time. You don't want to do that. If your IT teams require your devices to be on a certain OS before they are compliant and can access your data, leverage the minimal OS requirement during enrollment. It's a much better user experience doing it this way than having the end user boot all the way through the desktop and then tell them you need to update first. The actual update will take just as long, but this is in a more suitable place during the enrollment process. And the same counts for enabling file vault, right? If you need to enable or enforce file vault within your fleet, I would recommend that. That's a security best practice. Do it during the enrollment. It's better than having that be at the login or logout window instead. Both these things are available in all modern MDMs, so you should be able to just start leveraging that immediately. And then we come to our demos, right? Like I said, I will demo the same thing 3 times. My apologies. So let's start with Jamf. We select our country, we select our language, we connect to the network, we get the remote management screen, it loads some things, and then we get this. This is Jamf Setup Manager. So this is a tool built by the consulting engineering team at Jamf that allows you to do the app installation during the setup assistant before user creation. It has a nice UI. You have a button to see more details about your Mac. You can see the download speed, how long the enrollment will approximately take. You have an easy way to reach IT. And then when it starts installing your apps, you have a nice interface so your end users know what is happening on their device. I really like this because it puts the app installation in the most logical place during the enrollment process. I personally dislike getting to my desktop and being stopped to then install apps. So this is awesome. This is the enrollment experience that we use internally as well. And it's what we install with most of our customers. Once it's done, it will do a small countdown and then continue the setup assistant process. So then we get the location services pane in a second. This actually moved in Sequoia to after user creation now. And if we then continue, instead of the user creation, we get this. So this is Jamf Connect, which is the identity tool that Jamf makes available. It allows you to log into your Mac with your company credentials. So again, here we're using Microsoft. Could be Google, could be Okta, can be whatever. This creates a user on the fly, so the password is in sync with that of the identity provider. And you can make that user a standard user or an admin, doesn't really matter. And then we open self-service and leave our end users there. So they have some resources available to them, they can install their apps, they're on their way. I think this is a pretty decent enrollment experience. The next demo is with Kanji, so we'll do exactly the same. country, so language selection, network selection, remote management screen. It will load some things. You see that it immediately goes to the location services, again, which moved. And then you get this. This is Kanji Passport. So essentially for user creation, it's the same as Jamf Connect. It allows you to log in to your Mac with your identity provider credentials. This is that FileVault window that I spoke about. And before you get to the desktop, you then get this screen. This is Kanji Liftoff, so it will install some apps before you see the desktop and then end at this very nice setup screen. Now, I personally prefer having the app installation earlier within the enrollment process, but I really like this last touch. Instead of just opening self-service, you're giving your end users an option here. If they know what they're doing, they can open self-service and be on their way. But if it's a new user that's unsure how a Mac works, they can actually open up the basics. So that can be a PDF with some information for them. And this is customizable as well. So you could add something in here for accessibility, for example. And then we come to Microsoft. So this is Intune. We'll do exactly the same again. Country, language, network, remote management screen. In this case, we will need to log in with our Entra account. It's passwordless, so that's a nice touch. And then we wait. And the text sequence shortened here is important because the way this is set up, it will take quite a while. And this is a video provided to me by Microsoft. So this is how Microsoft says that their enrollment experience looks like. Once that's done, we continue with the setup assistant. So we get to the user creation. The full name and the account name are locked. So that comes from the IDP login. And we set our own password. Pretty vanilla setup experience, so we don't skip a lot of preference panes here. We will enable location services in a second. Here we go. FileVault, Touch ID, and then we eventually get to the desktop. Now we immediately get a pop-up, which is easy to miss, by the way, but anyway. We need to enter a password. And then it gets another screen, requires us to log in with the IDP again. We all know, or I assume we all know, that this is Platform SSO being configured, but the end user has no clue. They authenticate again. In the newest build of Platform SSO, they can enable passkeys here. This is not in that demo. But in the end, they need to enter their password again, and then they're done. And the benefit of all this is that they are logged into all their apps natively, so that's good. But this really isn't a good user experience, right? From the beginning, we're installing the full Microsoft suite, but also Defender, the company portal, probably some more things. And you have an end user just looking at a screen that says installing enterprise app. Knowing my end users, they will probably just close the computer and try to restart it. Once they then get to the desktop, most of my end users will not want to click that button, and I have nothing really to enforce that on them. And I not want to blame Microsoft for this, because this is really something that Apple designed. Platform SSO is something that Apple built, and Microsoft is just implementing it. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that at WWDC we'll see some quality of life improvements here. Preferably, I would like to log in with our IDP and be that passwordless, right? But knowing Apple, it probably won't be the way that works. I want to demo at least one open source tool. So this is Set Up Your Mac, which is essentially a Swift dialog overlay of policies being installed with Jamf. You have some information about your computer, but like I said, there are many open source tools out there that do something similar. And even on the Microsoft GitHub page, they have a resource ready for use in Intune, so you can have somewhat of a nice app installation experience within Intune as well. So this is all good and well for organizationally owned devices. These are all enrolled in an automatic way, but we have other devices as well. We have those BYO devices. So there is a solution for that as well, and the most user-friendly way to enroll those devices would be by account-driven enrollment. I'm going to start the demo here on the right. So if we go to System Settings, we're logged in with a personal Apple account, and we will add a second managed Apple account to that to enroll into management. Now, this does require managed Apple accounts, so you will need those in your Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager. You can federate with your IDP if you want to. This will cryptographically split the personal data and the organizational data on that device. Apple has documentation on how to enable this, but also they have documentation that you can give to your end users so they know, privacy-wise, what IT can and cannot see, can and cannot do. This requires a service discovery JSON on a web server. Now, Apple tells me that you can now pass this through the MDM, but I haven't seen any major MDM implement that yet. If you want more information about that discovery server, Vincent Bonnet from Jamf has a great resource on his GitHub page where he explains how you could build your own discovery server if you would want to, but also how you can combine account-driven user enrollment and account-driven device enrollment, which can be good for several things. So then we're done, right? The enrollment process is done, but we do want to enable our end users to do their best work, and we want to do that in a user-friendly way. So some general tips that I give our customers is to utilize self-service. Jamf and Kanji actually call it self-service. Microsoft has their company portal. Some other vendors call it something else. But if you have a portal that you can use to make things available to your end users, use it. Think about the workflow to let user request apps. Now, I know that not in every industry you will be able to do that, some compliance reasons for that. But if there is a valid use case for an app and you have an easy and secure way to make that app available and you can keep it up to date in the same manner, why not, right? Think about privilege elevation if you create your users as a standard user opposed to an admin user, which is a security best practice. You could allow privilege elevation, which I will demo in the next slide. And be transparent about issues. And with issues, I mean, for example, if you require your device to be in a certain state in order to be compliant, and your device is not, let the end user know first and foremost, but then also, if possible, let them self-remediate. Right? I have a whole category in our self-service where I let people do troubleshooting themselves. That saves me a lot of IT tickets, which is great for me, but it lets the end user remediate at their own convenience without having to contact IT or pass by your office. So privilege elevation, I will demo it with Jamf Connect, but so if you create your user as a standard user, you cannot do a lot of things. And then you have tools that allow you to temporarily elevate yourself to an admin. So this again, Jamf Connect in self-service, but you could use an open source tool such as SAP Privileges. You could script your way around this. Again, if your industry allows it, this will still have the benefit of your end users not being an admin all the time. It will have the benefit of them having to think about privilege elevation, so you have that awareness. You can add a lot of logging to this so you know what they're doing. And like you saw, you can just ask them what the reason is why they do that. If people abuse that, I don't think that's an IT problem. That's probably more an HR problem. But if your industry allows it, please consider using this. And then we come to security and compliance, right? First and foremost, check for CVEs within your organization. And if you find them, please patch accordingly, important. On the right here is Kanji, where they allow you to push out an app and have that be kept up to date automatically. I think it's called app installers as well, but for Jamf it's called app installers. You could leverage other tools. You can have manual policies with Installer-Mater, for example, to do this, or there are pay solutions such as the app catalog from Root 3 that allow similar functionality. Just as with the apps that you push out during enrollment, you want to think about the security agents that you push out on your fleet. Don't just move over all your Windows agents to the Mac. Try and get something that's purpose-built for your Mac fleet. And if you do need to adhere to certain security standards, so think about CIS or NIST, use the macOS Security Compliance Project. That will save you a lot of work to make those profiles and scripts. But read the baselines. Don't just push them out. There are things in there that will impact the user in a very significant way, and they're not often that big of a security risk. So do read your baselines before you just implement them. This is just a video of the Jamf Security Cloud that's checking for CVEs within your organization. And again, as soon as you have that data, then you can patch accordingly. Kanji has a similar offering. I think even Microsoft Defender can check for CVEs within your Apple devices. I already told you how you can update your devices upon enrollment. Now you want to keep doing that, and you want to keep doing that in a user-friendly way. So there are two things on display here. In the center, you have Nudge, which is an open source tool that will allow you to give your end users a friendly reminder to update. And top right is a scheduled OS install. So that's a declarative device management command, which will do the same. So it will tell your end users an update is available, and it will enforce it on a certain date. We internally have stopped using Nudge somewhere halfway through Sonoma and replaced it with only scheduled OS updates. And we have a script for that that schedules it automatically, so we don't even have any work with that. Like I said, patching your app, equally important. There are many ways to do that. This is yet another way to do that. This is called App Auto Patch, which is a tool that's built on top of Installmeter. So this will scan your app library. It will match those apps to Installmeter labels, check for updates, and then present those updates to your end users in a pretty user-friendly way. And then what's next? Think about where you leave your end users in the end. So for our example, that would be self-service that opens, and specifically, I open self-service in a category called onboarding with several tools for end users. But think about that stopping point. Do you have resources to make available to your end users? That can be as easy as the website where they can check their payslip, which is important, but also documentation, for example, for company-specific apps or anything else that you can make available to the end users. Is training available for your end users? And I will show you a couple of ways in the next slide. And is your IT team enabled to support the end users with their Apple devices? User training. Did you know that Apple provides free training for end users? If you go to apple.co/maxskills, you can enroll in several WebExes where your end users can get training from Apple in a more business-oriented way. If your company would have AppleCare for Enterprise, please tell your end users, because then they can call Apple for support with their devices, but they can also call Apple for support with their personal devices, which is a great service that you're putting out there for your end users. Highlight the Tips app. I know that I immediately close that pop-up as soon as I open a new device, but for people that do not know how to use their Apple devices, the Tips app really has great resources for them. This is one of the first things that you see when you open our self-service. Please do not disable accessibility. Don't skip the accessibility preference pane. There are more people than you think that have accessibility needs. You want to enable that, and I will show you 2 ways in the next slide. And think about an easy way to request support. So accessibility, again, 2 things on the slide. Bottom is a link from a session at JNUC. Yes, I know, yes, another session at JNUC. Lab9 is a very Jamf-heavy company, so we have a lot of resources coming from Jamf. This one, however, has nothing to do with Jamf specifically. If you go to that link, you will get a tutorial that shows you how to create a shortcut that will ask the end user what their accessibility needs are, and then as a result, they will get a note in their Notes app telling them what accessibility options are available for them and how that they can enable it, which I found pretty cool. What we do internally, I have a category called accessibility in our self-service, and I put the most used accessibility features in there. This has the benefit of me being able to put a description and a picture or video with it, but also the end user can just enable it from here without having to dive into system settings and search where that is. For support, we use the support app from Root 3, which is an app that lives in your dock, in your menu bar, sorry. If you click on it, you get some details for your computer, and this integrates with other services. So our password expiry is tied to Jamf Connect. If there is a scheduled OS update, it will show up in the thing as well. And we use this to ask our customers to reboot their computer after a certain time as well. This is fully customizable, so even the buttons on the bottom, we have it to open TeamViewer or self-service or send us an email, but you can put whatever you want in there. Then we get to IT training. Did you know that Apple actually provides free training for service desk employees? If you go to apple.co/techskills, currently you will see nothing because the sessions for EMEA are not planned, but you can click on, for example, Australia and get a gist of what they're offering. It's basic, but it's what your service desk employees would need to service your Apple devices. And of course, Apple has training and certification for both support and management, so you can get these certified support professional, certified IT professional certifications. MDM vendors have it as well, so Jamf has a very lengthy training and certification path. I know Kenji is starting with it as well. Other MDM vendors have it too, right? And if you would have Apple Care OS support, use it, please. Yes, it's expensive, but this is your lifeline as IT. If you're stuck with an issue, you can call Apple and have an Apple engineer look into that issue for you. Depending on which type of contract that you have, you can even have an Apple engineer come to your company, for example, just after WWDC, and validate your setup to what was announced at WWDC. I want to do 2 small shout-outs. The first one to our very own Benelux Apple admin community. We have a set of bookmarks that is about everything Apple. So things that are valuable for us as a reseller. Think about the deployment and management guide, security guides, things about the environment, energy settings, etc. But also a lot of third-party links. So every tool that I spoke about here is in there, plus a lot more. Conferences, just like this one, books, podcasts, whatever, everything is in there. And you can contribute to this as well. So if you have a tool that is interesting and you don't see it in there, you can actually submit it to be included as well. And then, of course, I want to shout out the beautiful Mac Admins community as well. There is the Mac Admin Slack, which is my greatest resource. I don't know if you ever had an issue. Chances are very high somebody on Slack had the same issue. Chances are equally high that it's already solved. So that's great. You can also ask questions, and people are actually trying to help you in there. So it's a very friendly community. They have a booth downstairs with t-shirts. Please support them. Mac Admin's podcast is great as well. I listen to this one when I have a long commute to a customer, but there's some valuable input in there as well. And then last but not least, Armin Briegel's Mac Admin's newsletter. Every Friday he sends out a newsletter with new releases and interesting topics for any Apple admin. That's my sign to go into the weekend, right? When that newsletter drops, I read it and then I go home. Not on the slide, but important as well, are the Mac Admins meetups. So there are user groups out there everywhere. I know there's one in London, probably more in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, Benelux, Germany, Paris, I can go on. Every state in the US has one. These meetups are fun, they're informative. There's usually free food and free beer, so that's great. Do attend them, they're really good to do. And with that, I'm through my slides. I don't know if there are any questions. Feel free also to talk to me. I'm here until Friday afternoon, or message me on Slack. I will certainly try and help you out. Thank you.